All right, let's call to order the special meeting of the Gainesville City Commission for February 23rd, 2015, as we take up the search for a new city auditor. And all are present, so we now need to move to adopt the agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adopt the agenda. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. Any discussion of such? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, well, Commissioners, we're going to have some quality candidates here, and to get the ball rolling, we'll start off with our Human Resources Director, Cheryl McBride. Ms. McBride.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Cheryl McBride, Human Resources Director. I'm going to introduce to you our search consultant. She will walk you through the process, what to expect, how we'll move forward with the interviews. She'll talk about interview questions, give you an opportunity to take a look at those before we get started with our first candidate. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Renee Narlock.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners.
Hey,
as you know, we're here today to do an interview process for city auditor candidates. At our last meeting, we talked about the pool and the candidates in the process, and we had 5 individuals that we were moving forward. We are actually interviewing 3 individuals today. There was one who, because of the open records, sunshine laws, was very uncomfortable with their current employer finding out about them looking for a job, which is very common. I see that a lot, unfortunately, and chose to test the waters on their end and decide that they didn't feel comfortable moving forward. The other candidate actually got an offer from their current employer to stay, including a promotion and increased salary. So we have 3 excellent candidates today that we're going to be interviewing. The first candidate is scheduled to start at 8:40, so I'm going to run through this really quickly, but we do need to go through a little bit of housekeeping here to make sure we all are on the same page. We have allotted 1 hour for each of the interviews this morning, and later this afternoon there will be candidates who will rotate with several commissioners, I believe 3 today and 4 tomorrow morning, where you will have one-on-one interviews with each candidate. Again, after lunch today, there'll be 3 commissioners that will do the one-on-ones, and then tomorrow there'll be 4. I do want to encourage you on a few fronts here about this process today. We are on a very tight schedule. We'll do everything we can to keep us on track and timely. The candidates are also meeting with the auditor's staff this morning. The candidate who is not present here, the other 2 are either meeting with the auditor's staff or taking a tour of the city. So we're rotating candidates through various functions this morning also. That said, I do want to talk to you about the booklets that you have before you, kind of run through those real quick and answer any questions that you have about those. Our schedule is in there, the interview schedule. That's the first tab. As you can see, it's a rather tight schedule. Beyond that, you have tabs for each of the candidates who are interviewing today. They're in alphabetical order. That section of the book includes their resume summary, a cover letter, their resume, a set of questions, which I will talk to you about in more detail in just a few minutes, a notes page, and then a rating sheet for each candidate. That's at the back of each section. I do want to call your attention to the rating sheet. I don't know if you can see this, but it's the last page in each section. And at the top of it, it says rating sheet. I want to call your attention to the bottom portion of the page because that's going to become important tomorrow when we regroup to talk about candidates. This is an area where you would make notations of any strengths that you feel like this candidate has for this position, as well as any areas of hesitation or concerns that you have. This will also become important when you do your one-on-ones with candidates to go back to these areas and revisit these with the candidates if you have any additional questions. The last tab is a ranking sheet, just helps you rank candidates. We have 3 candidates, so I'm not too concerned about I feel like you can probably rank those fairly easy. It's just a forced ranking of your number 1 candidate. If you want to use it, you can, and if not, that's fine too. That said, I would like to go back to the questions. There is the same set of questions is included in the booklet in each of the candidates' sections. It's probably the middle page in the section. It's before the notes page. Looks like this. There are 12 questions there. I really think there's really 10 questions because one is an introductory and one is a closing. But that said, we have a lot of ground to cover in the interview process. I would like you to take a few minutes and read these questions now. In the event that you want to append them somehow, or if there's something on here that is important to you that we haven't covered, I would certainly like to make sure that we make that adjustment. Now, what I'm going to suggest is that the mayor introduce the candidate or welcome the candidate and ask the first question, and then you rotate among you down the list of questions. This kind of gives the candidate a comfort level, if you will, of interacting with each of you, and I think that's an important element of this process. I would also remind you, I know you're trying to look over those questions, but I just want to remind you that as part of this process, you can and should ask follow-up questions if you need to. But you do need to stick to a standard set of questions, because what we're trying to do here and what's important is that we do have an apples-to-apples comparison of candidates. We don't want to go off on a tangent with a particular candidate in a certain area and then come back and say, well, they were really great in that area, but we didn't know what the other candidates did in that area. So the questions are broad enough and comprehensive enough that we should cover all of the areas, and we should be able to do it within the allotted time. I do encourage follow-up questions or clarification questions if you have them. What you must not ask is any questions related to age, race, color, gender, religion, national origin, marital status, sexual discrimination of any kind, disability, sexual orientation, gender identity. You just can't go there. If you do, Cheryl and I will be in the room, one of us, and we'll throw our flag real quick. I know you know better than to do that, but sometimes it's just when people start talking about their personal lives, you just get kind of close to asking things you shouldn't ask. So
can we ask them what they think about the Oscar winners last night?
But you can. But since I didn't see the Oscars, I would hate for you to ask me that.
Neither did I.
So, I would also encourage you to wait until the end of the process tomorrow. We'll have a debriefing, and at that time, that's the time for us to talk about candidates. I encourage you not to talk amongst yourself about candidates, because I just honestly want you to be objective and get to the end of the process and not be influenced by something somebody else perceived or said in this process. So I encourage you to wait until then, and then we'll have that time to openly discuss your thoughts about candidates and what our next steps are. Our goal is to either select a candidate to move forward and start a background check and all the things that we need to do in HR, or if you're not comfortable with that, if there's two candidates you really like and you want to move them forward, we'll talk about what our next steps will be to get to the end of the line here and get a selected candidate. I encourage everybody to turn off their phones. I know that you typically do that, but that's just a reminder. And with that said, let's go back. One more thing. There's also there's a piece of paper in the very back of your booklet, and the title of it is Oral Communications. It's just kind of a reminder to be looking for those things in the interview process that we're all watching anyway, but sometimes it's just good to remind you of did the candidate perform well in regard to these elements in oral communication. I think that is it. If there's any questions, or are we good with I guess let's go back to the questions.
Yeah, I'd ask my colleagues if they have any additional questions they'd like to add to this. Commissioners, go in order of lights. Commissioner Chase first, then Commissioner Poe.
Just real quick, I think there's way too many questions, but it's too early, too late for that. But is this whole process exactly how it has to be, or is this our process?
This is your process. Don't know that we want to change it much today.
Yeah, no, of course, but I don't see any. Anyway, maybe because I do this all the time, I would just rather interview them myself and come back and tell you. I'm not sure the purpose of this, but I never was before.
Well, you
Unless it's
will
just
be
to see
interviewing
people
them one-on-one, correct?
Yeah, no, I know, but it's like I'm a child here. Okay, 12 questions is a lot. Do they know they have an hour and they're going to get 12 questions?
Yes, sir. I've instructed them that they need to be concise but thorough.
Yeah, okay. I'm just going to sit here like we're going to go through the line and each pick a question. How cute.
Commissioner Poe.
Thanks. I want to go to question number 9. Is your idea there to see how our candidates have reacted in an uncomfortable situation? When I read that question, a difficult professional situation, that could be interpreted as a technical challenge, like a numbers and X's and O's kind of challenge, or a staffing or interaction with the public or scandal or something like that.
It is designed to learn about how they managed a difficult situation, whatever that may be, however they interpret that question. If you'd like it to be more specific, we can change that.
Well, depending on what we're trying to get out of it, I think the next one that asks about ethics is a little more clear, but if we're asking how they handled an uncomfortable situation, then maybe we should use that word. Difficult, to me, I don't know what we're getting at there.
You could say, the internet was down and you had a report that was due in 20 minutes.
Right.
That's pretty difficult.
Or at the end of the fiscal year, the spreadsheet didn't. So what are we getting after there?
So one of the things to listen for in that question, and certainly we can change it, we can eliminate it or we can alter it, but one of the things to listen for is if the situation that they share with you is pretty routine, then it might lead you to question perhaps in your one-on-one, what is that the most difficult thing they're dealing with? Then that may not be as complex as what someone might have to deal with here at the City of Gainesville.
Okay.
So are you comfortable with the question as is?
Yeah, I can follow up in one-on-one. That's fine.
Okay, I don't see any other lights. Any other changes requested of the questions? All right. Well, how about this? How about I start with the first question and finish with the 12th question, and then we can just sort of go down the list. We could ask Commissioner Carter, will you do number 2?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Poe, number 3. Commissioner Chase, number 4. Commissioner Hinson-Rawls, number 5. And Randy, if you'll do 6. Helen, 7. Back to you, Carter. Let's go back to Helen Warren for number 9. Commissioner Poe for number 10. And let's see, Commissioner Hinson-Rawls, would you like to do number 11?
Sure.
So I'm 8, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
That way it mix up a little bit.
And we're going to keep that in the next rotation. So we're
Sure, let's just keep this consistent. Is everyone okay with that?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, at least if we didn't, you'd have the answer to number 9
And-
someday for you.
And I think, as Renee indicated, if there's a follow-up to the question, so if one person asks a question and there sort of begs a follow-up and you're thinking of it, hit your light, and I'll make sure you recognize the follow-up. Try to keep in mind they're on a time schedule. So what happens if the first candidate, we get through all 12, but the second candidate, we're only on number 7 with like 3 minutes to go? Are we really expecting them to sort of speed answer, or do we just say that's that?
We finish the interview. And there'll be some fluidity here. Candidates are on standby in HR. If we finish early, they're coming over early. If we finish late, they'll come over as soon as we finish. We have them just a minute away. So we will tell them. And again, I know it seems like a lot of questions. I've done this a lot, and there's kind of a momentum that happens with this process. And so I'm sure we're going to be fine. We'll try to stick to schedule. With reference, Mayor, if I may, to question number 5, there's several bullet points there.
That's where I was
You
headed.
got the big one.
That's where I was headed.
There will be a list here face down for them, and you can just reference that those bullet points that are there. I'm writing them down for the candidates, so when it comes to that question, they can just turn it over and see the answer. In other words, you ask the question, and I'll let them, and you just let them know that they're written. Those bullet points are written on a piece of paper in front of them on the podium.
They don't have to hold it in their mind.
I understand. So I was wondering if I should ask each point one at a time.
You can ask them all at the same time and
Okay.
let them know that there's a piece of paper with those items
Okay.
written for their convenience on the podium. Save us some time, maybe.
Okay.
We're ready?
Well, is that it? I think
First
we're
candidate is
ready.
here. I'll bring her in and introduce her.
Wonderful. First candidate. It's on silent. It's never off because the mayor is now off. And the kids are at school. That may be.
No, I feel uncomfortable having to do this.
So is the reason they're listed in different orders?
We do
So
one
that it's
public
for random?
and one-on-one.
Is that the idea?
And a public institution.
Get reminded from time to
I
time.
just said I feel uncomfortable. Yeah, right.
Mayor and Commissioners, this is Ms. Kelly Hammond.
Wonderful. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. Time to get settled. Okay. Well, as first, congratulations on being a finalist for the position here of City Auditor. And we have your resume and background. And then we also have some questions that we'll be asking you. And you have already been made aware the scope of time that we're dealing with. So We certainly want thorough answers, but as concisely as possible. And with that said, I will get the ball rolling and ask the first question.
Okay.
We've had an opportunity to review your resume, so if you would at this time take a few minutes to explain from your perspective how your background prepares you for this position.
Sure. I've been in government for the past 25 years. I did start out in public accounting for about a year and a half. I worked on everything from small business to SEC clients. But after that, I transferred into the government arena. And like I said, I was in the government arena with Frederick County government for 25 years. And I started out and worked my way up in the ranks. Started out as a junior auditor and worked all the way up to audit director. And I worked in all facets. I worked as a compliance auditor, I worked as an operational auditor, and I worked as an audit manager, and I also worked as the audit director. And in that respect, I've worked in all facets that, in all the experience that you're looking for. I wanted to explain to you that, excuse me, I'm sorry. This is very different experience for me coming before the public and having an interview. This is quite different.
Yes. This is in Florida. We have the sunshine laws. And
yes,
so
you
everything's
do.
out in the sunshine, even on days when it's foggy.
Little different. Anyway,
Would you pull the mic down just a tiny bit?
sure.
Well, just okay.
Is that okay?
Probably. We'll see when you hear it.
All right.
I'm looking right at it instead of you. So.
There you go. Anyway, so I wanted to explain that in that respect, started out working in compliance audits, which are the financial and compliance, and then moved up into the operational audits, which, as you know, are more value-added audits, value added to the government, and much more in-depth. From there, I moved up into an audit management position where I supervised 6 auditors and on all compliance, financial, operational audits. And I wanted to explain to you, in the government, we audited not only the Frederick County government operations, but also the local community college and the public school system. So we had a $1.2 billion budget. So with only our 6 auditors, we had that entire aspect. And that is slightly different from most audit offices.
Yeah, I would say.
Usually, when you audit something, 3 separate entities like that, you should have around 14, an audit staff of 14. We only had 6. So we had to be quite efficient in our operations. Generally, we only put 1 auditor on every audit, although there were times when we had to put 2 or 3 auditors on an audit to get it done on time. I also have experience writing IT audit RFPs and contracts and managing those contracts. I have experience managing contractors on performance audits as well, because at one point the policy holders, our commissioners, made the decision to outsource our audit office. And that was much later in my career, towards the very end of my career, actually, when I was acting director. And they outsourced almost our entire audit staff. And at that point, I actually was tasked with writing a public-private contract with 2 vendors and writing all the task orders and overseeing those contracts and those audits for external vendors rather than the entire audit staff. At that point, I only had a staff of 1 auditor performing an audit and then the 2 vendors. And that was an interesting time in my career, and we worked extremely well together, and they did excellent work for us. But at that point, I decided to transfer into the audit manager's office because it was a little different than what I had planned for my career. I really wanted to gain a little bit of experience other than what I'd been doing before I decided to retire. So I transferred up to the county manager's office and got experience from the other side of the coin. Quite a different experience for me. I'd never been on the flip side, as you say, because I'd always been the auditor. I'd never been the auditee. So I gained quite a bit of experience there. I worked on legislation. I worked on the sale of a county-owned nursing home that, because of a lawsuit, they ended up with a lease purchase agreement at the time. And I also worked on the first land trust in the state of Maryland and worked very closely with the Habitat for Humanity, who was the owner of that land trust. That was a very interesting project. I really thoroughly enjoyed that. So, but as audit manager, before they outsourced our office, I gained quite a bit of experience developing the budget for the office and also risk assessments, annual risk assessments, and 5-year strategic risk assessments and audit plans. I'd also done that as the audit manager alongside the previous audit director, but I was solely responsible for that when I was the audit director, and I'd done that on several occasions. It's a very in-depth risk assessment that Frederick County develops, and that 5-year plan is a very in-depth document that was presented to our audit committee. I worked with the audit committee on a very regular basis. We were an independent agency in Frederick County. We did not report to the commissioners. We did not report to the county manager's office. We reported to the audit committee, which was an independent committee that was made up of one commissioner from Frederick County government, one audit board member from the public schools, and one board member from the community college, and then 4 public members. So they were the ones that hired our audit director, and the director hired our staff. So they were totally independent. So we met with them on a regular basis. I met with them on a regular basis, and our office staff did as well. And we allowed our office staff to present their own audit reports to them. So they had that experience as well. We also met with the commissioners on a regular basis and presented to them monthly. I also interacted with. We had a great relationship with our commissioners. So met both with the committee and the commissioners regularly during the audits and during the month on a regular basis. And I was very proud of the relationship that I developed with all of our managers throughout my career. We went from having no audit requests at all to during my last development of the risk assessment and audit plan, I had so many audit requests from the management that in 1 year I couldn't fit all of them into my 5-year audit plan. So I had gotten to the point where when I went out during the risk assessment, the way I did my risk assessment was I met with many managers and directors and talked to them about the risks in their agencies, and I developed my relationship with them to the point that they came to me and asked for the audits. And during the last year, like I said, there were so many requests I couldn't fit them into a 5-year plan. So that says quite a lot about our audit office. And I also had an over 95% implementation rate for our recommendations, which says a lot about how management felt about what we did. So I also would like to tell you,
You're covering a lot of ground here, so maybe make the rest of the questions go rather quickly.
Maybe. Maybe I should let you ask a few. I don't know if you want to know about the Yellow Book experience that I have, but the Yellow Book experience I have is quite in-depth. I sit on a peer review committee, and I work with them on a regular basis, and I coordinate the peer reviews across the country. So my experience is quite in-depth, and I receive questions from all the audit offices across the country on a regular basis. And they, as a matter of fact, I received 2 questions last week from 2 separate offices. One very easy question about CPE, and then one very difficult question about an audit office's independence and their probable lack thereof.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Commissioner Carter.
Yes, one, thank you for coming, and we do know it's awkward out there, so we apologize for that. My question for you is, as you perceive it, what is the primary role of the city auditor, and how are you going to go about defining and fulfilling that role?
I think the primary role of the auditor is to provide guidance and counsel and advice. It's never to, it's not to manage. It's not to implement. And it's to provide accountability for the public. And to work, I mean, how I would do that is to work closely with management, as I mentioned earlier, to develop relationships and work closely with management and with staff to review and not only the financial side, but the operational side and the controls. One of the primary roles is to advise you as the primary decision makers on what is happening and what needs to happen. But like I said, it's accountability to the public on if the funds of the public trust is being efficiently and effectively managed.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for being here. I'm going to ask you a question about trust and credibility. How would you establish credibility and build trust with elected officials, charter officers, department directors, staff, and the community at large upon arrival?
I believe the only way to build trust is to earn it. And to do that, you have to show people that you will do what you say you're going to do. And when you first arrive, I would meet with people. I mean, that's the first step. And, excuse me. I mean, I would have to learn your individual city, meet everybody, learn your processes individually for this particular city. Generally, operations overall work the same in most cities and counties. However, I would have to learn how your individual processes work, and then to do that, I would have to meet with people and meet with the staff, meet with you, and talk to you about what you would expect from me, what the individual departments want from me, and that's how I would earn the trust and the respect of everyone. And that would work at all levels.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Morning.
Good morning.
City of Gainesville values diversity and inclusiveness, and I will tell you that we value it more than just words and saying it. We practice it. So could you talk about some challenges you might have faced in your career ensuring diversity in your different roles, and what have you done specifically to address those challenges?
And by diversity, for example,
I mean, I would say I'm going to take a shot at defining it the way I think that we're asking a question, but
Okay.
that's diversity in our workforce and diversity, and that's probably ultimately what we're talking about in the processes that you partake in. And
Are you familiar with our protected classes that we have in our HR policies? Because makeup that embodies that would probably meet our definition of diversity.
okay. And I'm trying to think from the respective audit, if I've personally found challenges in the auditing of the diversity.
well, my guess would be that we're primarily talking potentially if you're ever in a hiring position is one area that I would
Okay.
think of within your organization and perhaps within even your county government's experiences
Right.
you might have had.
Right. In my office and in my experience, I don't know that I've ever really faced a challenge. I've interviewed people from all over the world, actually. Frederick County always had the same policies, and we've always allowed people to interview, and I have personally interviewed people of all from all walks of life and have never had any issues with that. So I don't know that I've ever experienced major challenges other than some language barriers would be a challenge that I've experienced as an auditor. You need to be able to communicate very well with the people that you're auditing. And so I would say that was probably the most challenging issue that I faced interviewing someone. And we overcame that. Actually, it was with an intern. And we ended up hiring the intern. And the person, we never ended up having any major issues. The person had some language barriers, and we worked through those language barriers. And we sent obviously it was an intern. They never went out on their own. So we had a senior auditor go with them on each of the interviews. But we worked through those issues. In addition to that, I'll give you another example. We had people from several other countries apply for one of our senior auditor positions. And in Frederick County, the way that we handle our interview process is the first interview is allowed to be via phone, but the second interview must be in person before, or the third, whatever it is. Before you were allowed to hire the person, the interview was required to be in person. We never experienced any major issues, and we hired, and the requirements were that if you hired the most qualified person for the position. And I never saw any issues with that in any of our departments. We had a very diverse organization, all countywide, also at the community college and also at the school system. So I can't really, I didn't really notice where we had an equal employment opportunity office if there was an issue. However, we didn't really have any major complaints throughout the county. So if I were to face that, I don't think personally in my office that would be an issue, not for me. If I were to see that and somebody were to come to me, I would bring that to the attention of whoever I needed to bring that to the attention to.
Very good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Commissioner Hinson-Rawls.
Could I follow up on that?
Yes.
Have you had the opportunity to audit organizations for diversity?
Not personally, I have not.
My question is, please describe your auditing experience within the following specific areas: performance, operational. You talked about a little of this in your overview. financial compliance, fraud and investigation, and utilities, 2 very serious issues for us. The bullet points are laying on your podium there to help remind you of them. They're on a little note
A
paper.
sheet of paper. Okay, if you can address those bullet points.
Okay. I've had experience with all the performance, the operational, the financial, the compliance, fraud and investigation, and utilities, actually. Performance and operational are probably where I spent most of my time. I started out my career with financial and compliance, and in our office, one of the bigger compliance audits that we worked on was the single audit, so we have grant experience as well. But we had many compliance-type audits, and most audits involve some kind of compliance work as well. And a lot of the performance operational audits involve a financial side as well. But we also, in our office, worked on solely financial audits and issued some financial audits. I'm trying to think. A hotel rental tax. We did the hotel rental tax, and we issued that as a financial audit. I'm trying to think. I wrote down some audits here. Performance and operational. One of the major audits was a P-card audit, an audit of the whole P-card operation and the purchasing operations as a whole. And the P-card audit, I made a recommendation that could save the county over $500,000 in annual savings with a simple, little to no cost implementation of a recommendation. So had they implemented that, when they implemented that, they would save over $500,000 each and every year. And with a slight adjustment to that recommendation, they could save up to $1 million a year. So that was one of the bigger audits. Police and property, police property and evidence room audit is another big performance audit. Permits and inspections. Regards to utilities, water and sewer, fee collections and meter reading audit, solid waste revenue audit, telecommunication audits, property tax and treasury, fire and police overtime audits. That goes back to the performance. Fraud investigations. One of the very first things that I did for the county, and actually I was a junior auditor at the time, was a fraud investigation. Later in my career, I shouldn't say later, it was actually early on in my career, we did not have a fraud hotline, but I went to my director at the time and I suggested that we implement one, and I was tasked with and did develop and implement a fraud hotline for our countywide fraud hotline. And I also developed and devised a website for that fraud hotline. So we now have that at Frederick County. It's an internal audit fraud hotline. It's not open to the public, but because we didn't have the staff to man it, had that been done, we were too small for that. But we did. I have to say that most of our fraud investigations came as a result of people walking into my office and sitting down and talking to me. They felt more comfortable doing that than picking up a phone and calling anonymously because they knew me and I'd been there so long. So, and we worked on quite a few fraud investigations. And when warranted, we co-worked on those with the sheriff's office. The first one that I mentioned actually resulted in the dismissal of several high-level staff. And then one that I can remember later, and I can't get into all the details on those, but resulted in the dismissal of one of our department directors and involved him quite. I mean, it was a result of him, and our county manager had come to us and asked us to look into that. I also developed a consistent and recurring reporting process for our follow-up audits because prior to that, always had a follow-up process, but we didn't have a reporting process for our audit committee, and they were a consistent process for that. So I had implemented a regular reporting process for them, so they were aware on a regular basis what was going on with each and every recommendation. I'm trying to think if there's other. We housing grants, dining services audit at the community college, where we reduced the dining services function out at the community colleges was losing money on a regular basis, and it was actually their policy that they lose money. So we went out and did an operational audit out there. And, yeah, that was quite amazing to me, too. And so we went out there, and almost immediately we saw some things that could be fixed, and it resulted in the immediate reduction of $80,000 in losses. And then after that, their losses kept reducing. But it was, I mean, on day one, there was things that could be fixed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Very thorough.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You've kind of touched upon this a little bit already, but obviously your role as a city auditor can be a threatening role. And so maybe you can talk a little bit more about how you deal with that and maintain a positive working relationship with high-level officers like our charter officers or other employees that you come in contact with.
Sure. I mean, the auditor has to, at times, deliver bad news. I mean, that's our job. But as long as we do our job fairly and deliver our news fairly, accurately, and in a balanced manner, regardless of whether it's good or bad, then we've done our job. If the report and how we present ourselves is balanced, I think then we've done our job. As long as we maintain our ethics and our morals and present ourselves in as a positive manner as we can, and we're objective, then I think that's the best. That's all we can do, and it needs to be balanced. And we need to work with management and with you on an ongoing basis, especially if there's an issue at hand. Keeping you informed all the way through the process. I think there should be no surprises.
Okay, good morning again.
Good morning.
Under what circumstances would you contract with an independent external auditing firm and why?
I think there are times when the staff may or may not have the expertise to perform some of the tasks on a particular audit, and this has happened in, for example, if we don't have an IT auditor on hand, and we need to perform on an audit an IT function, so we might need to contract out for that particular function during the audit, or if there's an engineering function that needs to be looked at, and we don't have that expertise in-house. There's a lot of functions that may need to be looked at, and we don't necessarily have the expertise in-house. So I think that's when you contract out.
Okay.
On this next question, I'm going to give you information before I ask the question. Everything that you do, email and everything, is public record immediately, virtually. So, knowing that, describe from your point of view what you believe the ideal communication relationship between you and your supervisors. In addition, how do you deliver both good and bad news?
Okay. Well, I think I answered a little bit of that question a minute ago, but I think the ideal relationship is a combination of written and one-on-one verbal. Actually, I think I kind of answered that question a few minutes ago. almost entirely. I think you need to keep everyone in the process informed throughout the audit process. And that involves not only written communication, but verbal communication. It's very important, and this is how I maintain my relationships at Frederick County. It's very important to have ongoing meetings throughout the audit process. If that is not occurring, then the audit organization, as well as you, and I'm not sure how things work here, but in Frederick County, the commissioners did not want to be inundated with meetings. They did not want to know everything all the time. But if something were important that came up during the audit process, they immediately wanted to know. And I would assume that's the same here. If something is amiss during the audit and it's going to come back on them, then they're going to want to know right away. And it's my job to inform you when that occurs. And I would want to do that with you in person. I think it's important that you know that immediately and one-on-one, because you need to know the details. And the only way that you can know that is if I'm sitting down with you talking to you. There is a time for written communication as well. There's management letters, and there's reasons for management letters, so that follow-up can come about. But if you don't have that one-on-one, and you can ask me questions, and I can give you that information. And like I said, the bad news has to be balanced. It's got to report things. It can't over-exaggerate, but it can't under-exaggerate the risks that are there.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Back down to this end, bookends here. What was the most difficult professional situation that you have found yourself in? One question. And then explain the circumstances and your efforts in managing them.
I would have to say the most difficult professional situation was when I was asked to do something that could possibly definitely went against my ethics and against what the standards of my profession. And if I had followed through and ignored the ethics, could take my licenses away. And what I chose to do, thank goodness, did not end up in me having to leave, but ended up in someone else leaving. And that person, I'm hesitating because of where we are, was above me.
Okay. We certainly don't want you sharing information that was quiet in that community or whatever was involved there with our sunshine.
If I may, is there just a singular example of that, or you've had 20 years of government experience, 25 years, something along those lines? I mean, we hope it's infrequent.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, no. Yes, it is infrequent,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
I'm trying to think of.
You
Maybe
you don't have
that's
to.
the example that pops into my
You don't
head.
have to, I just,
I have a follow-up on that.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Pratt.
I want to clarify then this example that you're sharing with us. What I've heard from you is essentially you were asked by a superior to take a certain action. This action was, in your words, unethical or against the standards of your profession. And so then walk us through how you dealt with that situation. I mean, what did you communicate with other people? Did you communicate directly with this person who was making the ask of you? What was the you don't have to tell us the
Okay.
details, but I want to
Yes.
understand how you handled that process.
Okay. My first step was to deal directly with the person, and because I had to go beyond that, I dealt with others on the committee, and it was handled through a process of discussion with the rest of the committee. And
this is that same oversight committee that you described earlier with the members of the public plus the school board, college, and
yes.
county? Okay.
Yes. So it resulted in me not having to perform the action I was asked to do.
Okay. Thank you.
Me now. What have several other people, such as auditees, or even that committee you're talking about, told you are your strengths? What about your shortcomings or development needs?
Well, regarding my strengths, I would say I'm fairly forward-thinking and ethical, and I have the ability to get the job done and switch priorities when necessary and work on multiple projects at the same time, and develop relationships, positive relationships with all levels in the organization. I have an extremely positive relationship with the commissioners and the audit committee members, and especially with management in the organization and with staff, and as I mentioned, with the management, because they respected our audit organization and our audit staff, and so much so that many members of my audit staff were offered jobs. Thank goodness they didn't take them. And on regards to the weaknesses, I would have to say that I'm someone who enjoys getting a lot done, and probably to the point that I take on too much, and I need to take a step back and get perspective sometimes. And I've learned through that process that I need to take a new look at things and to be more efficient, delegate, and rely on others to help me. And I've also learned that sometimes the tried and true method might be the most efficient method.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Poe, was your question answered earlier sufficiently, or do you want to
Mr. Mayor, I think we had another follow-up question for you, Ms. Hammond, but it essentially was the situation where you face an ethical dilemma. So because you used an ethical dilemma to answer a difficult or challenging situation professionally, I think that they dovetailed.
Okay.
I think it was answered.
All right, so that brings it back to me. We're almost done. So why are you interested in the city auditor's position here at the city of Gainesville?
When I received the notification of this position, it seemed very fitting for me and my personality, and I looked into the city. First of all, Florida is somewhere I've always, not always, but more recently been interested in. I've lived in Maryland my whole life. My sister lives here in Florida, and for many years now, I've wanted to come south, and I didn't have necessarily just Florida in mind, but I wanted to move south. And both of my sisters actually have lived in Georgia and in Florida, and they've always been asking me for years to come down here. So for Gainesville, when I read the position, it looked like a very good fit for me. It looked very similar to the position that I had in Frederick County. And once I read about Gainesville and watched some of your proceedings online.
You're still in.
Could you list the ones you watched?
Well, it's funny that you say that because it did look very similar to Frederick County's proceedings. So I thought, okay, if I can handle Frederick County. But it's fun. And then after being here last night, and I do have to say, I came from 13 inches of snow on the ground and very frigid temperatures, so it was very nice to be here in the warm weather and the sun. But I am very interested in, I was very interested in coming down here and seeing if it would be a good fit for me, and I have to say I am still very interested. And I'm very committed. I do want you to know that I'm very committed to auditing and very driven to deliver high-quality work, and still very interested in this position.
And finally, are there any? Is there anything you'd like to add or to clarify? If you want to go back, I know sometimes it is. You think, oh man, I wish I had said that on question 2 or something. So, is there anything you'd like to go back and add some texture to, or are there any questions you may have for us?
I do have questions, but I thought I'd save those for when we meet. And I don't honestly. I can't. I'm swearing, so I'm not sure about the qualifications. I do want to reiterate on the. I know that it was important that the person that you hire was. Qualified with the Yellow Book standards, and I know that I talked about being on the committee, but not only does my Yellow Book experience come from being on the committee, my 25 years of experience, my office was required to issue all of our reports in accordance with Yellow Book standards. So yes, I have experience from being on the committee since 2010 and being a coordinator since 2012, but I've worked with the government auditing standards my entire 25-year career. So I also have that experience as well.
All right. Well, Ms. Hammond, we want to thank you very much for answering very extensively a broad set of questions. You did very, very well. And I guess we'll conclude this piece right here and excuse you. And I think we could probably take a recess on our own. Ms. McBride, how would we proceed? When's our next scheduled?
I've asked them to come at 9:45. So we have about 10 minutes.
All right. So we'll. Sure.
Mayor?
Yes.
I think it's important to point out, despite what the young lady from Tallahassee said, this is Gator country, and you need to bone up on that.
Yes, I know. I thought about that. I was going to look up before I came what were all the sports affiliations here, because I have to say I am a diehard, and it's hard to admit right now, Redskins fan. You know, it's a shameful admit.
You would not get along with that in this town.
You gotta have it.
I am, just because I was born and raised there.
Right, gotta have it.
So I would have to be a co-fan, I guess.
There you go. Commissioner Chase?
I wanted to ask if, since we have one-on-ones, but there was something that I thought was interesting that I wanted to talk with Ms. Hammond about, if I could share it, just to everybody to see if it's a topic that, because is that appropriate? It's not anything specific, but just, so in kind of just doing some reading and all, I think potentially there might have been, it's interesting to see what the Frederick County government has gone through to me. And you've changed your entire form and structure of government just recently.
Yes.
And so through your eyes, if there was any experiences of that or any kind of insight you might have into that to talk about. I'm going to ask you about it, but just I think that, you know, it is very similar in size to Alachua County and similar kind of things. And so they, anyway, I think it's an interesting thing to be part of a senior person during that time. So.
Right.
I just want to let everybody know, because that's
right.
I think it's an interesting topic.
It was interesting, and I did sit on the transition team while I was in the county manager's office, which we just were involved in helping some of the changeover in the processes. So it was an interesting process, although I did leave in October right before the election. But
Well, thank you very much. We'll be in recess until 9:45.
It's official.
Mayor and Commissioners, this is Mr. Carlos Holt.
Welcome.
Wonderful.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. Testing.
Thank you very much for being with us today, and also just want to offer congratulations on being a finalist for this position. And we had already received your resume. Now it's put together in a nice little packet for us, so we can reference it as we go through these series of questions. We have about 12 questions, although some of them have some context to them, and you will have about an hour to go through them at your pace, and we should have plenty of time. What we're finding is that we can cover all this ground, so we want you to take your time and be thorough, and let us know what we want to know, essentially. I'm going to start with the first question, and then each of my colleagues will ask some questions, and then we'll come back and sort of wrap it all up. Okay, anything before we get started? Ready? Wonderful. All right, so we've had an opportunity to review your resume. If you would now just take a few minutes to explain from your perspective how your background prepares you for this position.
Well, I believe my background prepares me very well for the position. For the last 8 years, I've been in the trenches with internal audit and in a large city, about 3 to 4 times this size, and understand there's various differences to different sized communities. But in 2007, they had a public referendum to make internal audit independent. It used to be under finance. They hired my boss, who's the Metropolitan Auditor, who's you're welcome to call, Mark Swan, very good man, very good auditor. He was hired. He hired me. I was working at Space and Naval Warfare Center in Charleston, South Carolina, in the Inspector General office. He hired me as the internal audit manager, and we have completed approximately 17 audits a year. We have a staff of 10. I have 8 direct reports. I have been basically on the front line conducting audits and investigations of city and county functions. We are a metropolitan government of combined operations similar to Duval County and Jacksonville. And we've done everything from audit the water system to the trash collection to the register of deeds, the county clerk, traffic tickets. I spent about a year auditing crime statistics after it was alleged our police department had fudged the figures. I've actually given a lot of speaking engagements and conferences and direction courses on auditing. I speak at in Middle Tennessee State University on a fairly regular basis to their accounting department, to their potential auditors. I'm well known in the community, and I interface with many public organizations, professional organizations. I've been a CPA since when I first got to, they hired me in Nashville. I found out I had 2 subordinates that were CPAs. So I was a CIA and a CFE at the time. I had my enough accounting hours, so I went ahead and put in for the CPA test, ordered the materials, and had everything completed and my license in 5 months, which I thought was pretty good because you can only take it every quarter. So I believe that my background and experience, and I spent 21 years in the Marine Corps, and much of that time, at least the last part of the last 10 years, except for a couple of wars, I was in charge of either compliance, operations, comptroller, accounting departments, or business operations. Had a $10 million contracting warrant. I stood up a management analysis control office. I put in place an internal control program from scratch for a large business operation with about 40 businesses across a major military installation. Uncovered probably 6 fraud schemes in the first 6 months, and wrote a chapter in an ACFE fraud case book that was published on one of the cases. And I believe I'm fully qualified for the job.
Wonderful. Thank you for that response. And Commissioner Carter?
Thank you very much for being here. My question today, or one of them, is as you perceive it, what is the primary role of a city auditor, and how will you go about defining and fulfilling that role?
Well, the public interest is the overriding concern in any function, in my belief, and if you go by government auditing standards, that is the overriding principle in auditing standards, is the public interest. The public generally has an interest in efficient and responsive government, effective government, and they want to know the truth, whether it's good or bad. And I see at the city auditor position, sometime I'm going to bring you bad news. But in a way, it's good news that we found this out in time to correct it. It's not what some of us in auditing call a lurking demon. Right now, any government of this size or larger probably has several lurking demons that are out there that you're not sure exactly what they are at this time, but they're going to roar their ugly head at some point in the future and bite you. And if that internal auditor can look out across the horizon and see what other cities are doing, audit various aspects of the government, use external and internal resources to get to the bottom of things, and also take requests when somebody spots a problem, wants to know the truth, what is going on with that function, and can get in there and get back in a reasonable period of time and tell you the answers, they've done their job. They shouldn't be biased. They shouldn't, if they lean one way or another on various things, they should keep that in their own pocket. The internal audit shop should. Decisions are made by management, not by auditors. Auditor's job is to bring you the information that you need to know to do your job. And that's what I would intend to do. And I met your staff over there. I spent about an hour with them, and they're great people. But as I explained to them, with a new director, you will always have change, and people are resistant to change. And they seem to agree with that, and because people have a different way of doing things. So there'd be changes I'd definitely make as soon as I came aboard.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here today. I appreciate you making the trip. I'm going to ask you a question about credibility and trust, important to our function and yours. How would you establish credibility and build trust with the elected officials, with your fellow charter officers, with department directors and staff, and the community at large?
Well, that's something that all members of your staff basically you have to do on a daily basis. You can't just do it once or say this is what you stand for and this is how you're going to be. That's something you basically have to walk the walk on a daily basis. Everything from being competent and knowing what you're talking about, not running on. You have to stick to your ethical principles. You have to be seen as a reasonable person that's just trying to do a good job. If you're out there, getting all kinds of violations from the police department or known to be, in bars half the night every night, you're probably going to some bad things are going to happen to you. If you're known to say things that aren't true and exaggerate things that you find, you're not going to be held very credible. And over a period of time, when you have delivered on expectations, then people will begin to trust you, and you're going to build trusting relationships, throughout the organization. Audit can't be seen as I'm going to, they're going to come in and give me all these gotcha. We got you on this one and got you on this one, and exaggerate them and run out with these reports and surprise reports that there should be no surprises in audit report. Everybody should know, before the report comes out, everything should have been discussed many times with the department or whoever's being audited, the opportunity to respond and convince you why it's wrong or different or should be seen in a different light. All of those things have to be taken into consideration. And you just have to stick to your principle. You got somebody on your staff that doesn't hold true or doesn't perform, and you're going to have to try to correct them, or may have to part with them. But your entire staff, that city auditor, he's responsible for his staff and himself and his conduct. And over time, building relationships and delivering worthwhile results that meets the needs of the expectations, adding value to the organ. If you're not adding value, why are you going to fund the department?
Very good, thank you. The city of Gainesville values diversity and inclusiveness a great deal. We've do more than just put words out in policies. We really are proactive about it, and it's important. Can you talk about any challenges that you've faced in ensuring diversity in your office or any of your experiences professionally, and what kind of things did you specifically do to address them?
I have never had a problem sharing, having diversified functions. In Nashville, we have gone out of our way to be very inclusive in our hiring. We have a staff of 10, and we usually hire the best person for the job, and that has always resulted in a various mix of male, female, African American, Asian, and Caucasian, workers. I have never been in the position of an HR person or somebody to decide any policy or anything of that nature. In the military, the recruiting was done elsewhere, as long as you treated people right. And I tell you, in the Marine Corps, from day one in boot camp, everybody's scrambling, so there really isn't. I can't say that I've really ever been challenged with that, but I see the need to be open and diverse, and I believe it's good to be that way and to be proactive. I have no problem with it. I can't really cite you that many experiences I have with any type of policy or hiring decisions or any adversities. I've never had any complaints or anything of that nature.
Thank you.
Please, good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to Gainesville.
Thank you.
Is that an orange and blue tie?
No.
It's red and blue.
It's red and blue. I believe it's from Princeton.
Okay. I'll forgive you for that.
My wife buys me all these old school ties.
Yeah. We're gonna call it orange and blue today. Okay. Orange and blue, orange and blue. Think orange and blue. Please describe your auditing experience within the following specific areas: performance, operational, financial, compliance, fraud and investigation, which it sounds like you have much, and utilities. These bullet points are listed on a piece of paper there for you to, you see them?
Okay, yes, I see them. Well, if you go by Yellow Book standards, first of all, there's really only three types of engagements, and that is a financial audit, and attestation engagement is the second kind, and there's three types of those. One of them is agreed upon procedures. That's the lowest level where you write down everything you're going to do, and that's all you do. The second one is a review level, and that's where you go in and look at everything and say, well, nothing else came to my attention. And then the one like you get on your financial statements, that's an attestation examination level, and that's where you got to go back and do everything. Look at the processes. There is no that nothing came to our attention. You are responsible for checking it out. But for the most part, what you're talking about fall under the category in the Yellow Book of performance audits. Then the performance audits can be compliance, operational. Those are all described in the scope. So when you're talking about an audit, most of our audits are performance audits, and they have various scopes, such as operational aspects to them, or compliance with regulations and so forth, or a fraud to determine if there's fraud present in the payroll system. So all of those fall under the category of performance audits, which, as I said, I have been responsible for overseeing approximately 17 or more performance audits a year for the last 8 years. I did a number of performance compliance audits in the military. I also did management functions, setting up the internal control program and the training for all the supervisors and above. I was the single point of contact at Space and Naval Warfare Center, a $5 billion organization for the Manager's Internal Control Program for the Department of Defense. I reported to the CO for the whole program. I interfaced with every department that we had. So going back to utilities, since I've been in Nashville, we have done several audits of the water, mainly water. We just put in a new billing and cash collection system a couple of years ago, and we just finished an audit of it, which I have a report here with me if you'd like to see it, on auditing that function. Basically, we looked at the cash collection process within water and all the various places that collected cash. We looked at the new system that was put in, all of the IT controls, the roles and responsibilities. You have to have a segregation of duties within the system so that one person can't write down a bill and then also be responsible for the collections. You have to have various such as in payroll. You can't have somebody write down some of the biggest payroll schemes, or somebody changes the rate of pay right before the payroll and then changes it back. Or they have what they call ghost employees. Somebody quits, and we keep generating a paycheck for them for the next 6 months and cashing it. Or we change their account number so the bank transfer goes to account we are overseeing. And that takes somebody inside the organization. So you have to look more and more. A lot of these audits have an IT component to them. And you have to have that element within your audit shop. As far as, and I've done a number of conflict of interest investigations with the water department. We have about a $1 billion stormwater program after a consent decree from the federal government. And so we have $260 million worth of water bills annually. And so I've done various audits or investigations spurred by complaints that somebody was getting more contracts than they should. This contractor was getting more than they should. They couldn't do the work. Nobody was out there, and various things like that. So, and getting back to the fraud, I've been a frequent speaker. I probably have, over, I don't know how many, definitely over 100 and something fraud cases. I worked probably 80% of my time at SPAWAR on fraud cases, mainly conflict of interest and various contract irregularities, everything from no price controls to the personnel substitution. The contractor bids saying they're going to have these various qualified people and named people, and then they start switching various people with little experience in anything. And also, the deliverables, what they're providing. So I did that a lot. I also did a number of audits at SPAWAR, but I've handled, every one of those areas many times over many years.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Wells?
Thank you and good morning. Obviously, as you touched on there, the role of the city auditor can be a threatening one. And so I'd like to have an understanding how you pursue maintaining positive relationships, whether it be with the senior officers, in our case, charter officers, or the other employees within the organizations as you go about doing your work.
Well, it all gets back to the communication and building relationships from the start, and of course finding out and acting on the process, not stepping outside of the process. And just, I've seen auditors in other cities, and they get themselves in trouble. And when one of the ways is somebody wants them to audit something, or they come up with some kind of idea, and they go off and running on some big audit that in the end doesn't turn out too good, and then everybody claims that you shouldn't have done that audit. Why did you go do all that? And so if you stick with the process by getting an audit plan, getting it approved, something comes up, you add it to the audit plan. You ask your audit committee whether that's a good idea, whether you want this audited, and they endorse it. You're in much better shape to have that audit planned. I mean, you're auditing so that management can make better decisions, and that's why you're providing the information. So if you're seen as a tool, a value-added tool for management, that's going to go a long way. You're not just out there on your own whims auditing things that may or may not need to be audited. Quite frankly, an audit plan should be based on the strategic plan of the government. We need to do a risk assessment, and the risks are dependent on what your objectives are. The risks have to cover our objectives. If your objective is to be a tourist town, if that is your number one priority, then our risk assessment should be on what could cause that to derail. In Nashville, we get a lot of tourists, so we've gone out, we've audited the health inspections on restaurants, we've audited the safety downtown, we've audited all the hotels, we've all of those kind of things that could derail this plan. The mayor there, he wants to develop a better school system. That is a priority of his. So is the police department and public safety. We've done a lot of audits in schools and public safety so that those strategic plan elements aren't derailed. If we're auditing things that are of lesser importance to you, they're not going to do you as much good. So, and when the audit's on the plan, everybody sees it. That department head that doesn't necessarily want an audit has now found out that he's on the audit plan. He may be apprehensive, especially if they haven't met you before. But after you've introduced yourself and went down in a non-threatening manner and tried to get acquainted with what they're doing and listen to them, and they can identify you with you, they know you're just doing your job. And, you know, your position should always be we're here to help. You know, we're not here just to drag you through and nickel and dime you over every little thing you might have done and find 5 transactions out of 5 million that were bad and put them in the report. You know, to me, those probably are non-material. What we want to audit is their process to determine where their process has control weaknesses and how it should be bettered. Now, we find large variances and stuff. Of course, they're going to have to be reported. Might be some bad news in there, but you can correct it and move on. And I think over time, after using that manner and that strategy, people will identify with you and your staff, and you won't be feared.
Okay.
Thank you.
My turn. Welcome to Gainesville.
Thank you.
Under what circumstances would you contract with an independent external auditing firm, and why?
That's a very good question.
Well, thank you.
And that has to be done. Sometimes we've done that in Nashville sometimes. And there's several instances where you might do that. One is if there's a big project that comes forth that you don't have the personnel for. The commission still wants you to carry on your audit plan, and there's something big out there that would basically take up your whole office for 8 months. You may not have the resources for that. So that would be one. Don't say yes, we're going to do it, and we're going to deliver it and not be able to do it. I don't want to tell you I'm going to be able to bring you something and not be standing here to be able to do it. So that's one instance. The second instance is sometimes there are subjects or whatever that are so sensitive, or because the overall perception is that government in any of its, even though city auditor is independent, that because he is part of this government, he's to protect the organization. And sometimes you just have to go outside and get somebody else that has no skin in the game, that might not even be from around here, to come in and do the audit so people will listen to them. So that's another time. Now, in both of those times, I'll tell you, the audit function in-house can still play a valuable role. You can't just give it to a contractor and let them run. Because for the most part, that's not going to work. They are going to come back with delay after delay and change order after change order. And that audit that was going to take, that they promised you in 3 months, is going to take 1.5 years and going to cost you 3 times as much as you wanted it to. But if you're on top of things, not after it gets started, before the contract is signed. When I wrote contracts, I went through every possible element that could be and tried to make specifics in there, and then got a legal advisor to approve the language, so that all of that, everything that you could think of, was settled before the agreement signed. The old, Andy Griffith handshakes and everything and promises and stuff don't always work that good, and because they can go wrong. And there's many of these big reports you can get that still, you've been waiting on this report for so long, and it's still not going to answer your questions.
Okay.
So,
sorry about that. Okay, back down to me. Before I ask this question, I was going to tell you a little information you might not be aware of, but all the communications, emails, and everything are public record here. So as soon as you would send one, virtually the public can read it. So keeping that in mind, describe from your point of view what you believe the ideal communication relationship between you and your supervisors. In addition, how would you deliver both good and bad news?
well, in Nashville, in Tennessee in general, they have one of the first open records acts, and everything is open record there. Audit reports are open record after the final report. not up through the draft. And investigations of hotline calls are only public after the final report. Other than that, everything is confidential. But we are subject to, email. Not that everybody does get our email. They can get them if they want them, but for the most part, they're not interested in this time. They're too boring. But I have no problem interfacing by email with any. Sometimes it is the most convenient means. But like I tell some of my staff, I'll say, well, get in touch with those people and go, find out about this. And they'll say, okay, I'll go send them an email right quick. No, wait a minute. Hold on. Sometimes you just have to call people or go over there. Because, with 15 emails back and forth, you're still not going to know what you would in 10 minutes of sitting down with them. So, there's a various means of communication that need to be utilized. I have no problem utilizing any of them, or interdepartmental mail or what have you, and being fully aware that somebody can grab it at any time and the public can read it, and just make sure when you write something, if you get mad at somebody, you don't write them an email right then. You wait till tomorrow, because you probably wouldn't write the same one. And that happens a lot. People get mad, they go run down the hall, fire off something, and then by the next day they've changed their mind about it. But delivering good and bad news, first of all, most things should be open. Some things are, so striking that you may have to keep it a secret and deliver it at the proper time and place. And that may have to be done in person. I'm not much for sending emails of, look, we found all of a sudden or something of that nature till it's all checked out. A lot of times you get information comes in, it looks like something might be a big deal, and then by the time you've checked it all out, it's not quite as big maybe as you thought it was. So you need to let all of that play out before inflaming people. So I'm fine with delivering it for whatever the situation merits at the time. I've ran over across the street to colonels' offices before to tell them something, and it needed to be told immediately, and had problem with that. And at other times, sent them an email. The same thing for department heads in the Nashville area. But it just depends on the situation.
Back down to this end again. What was the most difficult professional situation that you have found yourself in? Question one. And the second part of that, explain the circumstances and your efforts to manage them.
I probably think some of my time at Spay War was probably the most difficult. Although I loved the work and I was fully engaged. My boss had been there a long time, and unlike my boss now, who is very effective and worked well with, loved the man, does a great job. She had some, the organization was basically telling me, hey, you're the only person that stayed down there, that's been able to work with her over a period of years. So, I mean, most of the organization had the perception that she wasn't that effective. So, I was kind of, fighting that all the time, actually trying to defend her and getting, we were getting out good work over the years. So I think that kind of knocked some of it back. But I don't know, that it got kind of awkward to respond to all of these people who would, make comments about her and everything. You're talking about my boss, and I work with a woman and still, I'm friends with her and respect her a great deal. And not exactly sure what led to all the negativity, but it was a very awkward position to be in as the number two person. And I didn't leave Spay War for that reason. I basically left because after 21 years, when I retired from the military, I found out that working for the federal government, they were just beginning to put all of these little parameters in place for retirement with the federal government. When you already had a military retirement, there was various limiting factors going in there. So I spoke with the law director, who basically told me you'd probably be better off going somewhere else to work on another retirement rather than with the federal government, because by the time you retire, they're going to have so many things in place, you're never going to get anything. So I started, it was amazingly, I had an old resume out on the Institute for Internal Auditor website. I got an email after they stood up the independent office from my boss. They had hired him, and he emailed. I never even applied for the job. He emailed me and asked me if I was interested in it. My wife and I had just actually come back from Nashville on vacation. So I called him, and within a few months he hired me.
What, if you could describe a work situation in which you faced an ethical dilemma, what was the situation, what made it difficult, and why did you eventually choose the path that you did?
Well, let's see. Well, I was thinking hard. I guess there's been audits over the years that there's, sometimes elements that you've uncovered that could be damaging to the people in the department that you like and like to work with, and you don't want to get them fired. Also on investigations, you're sitting there with and it's particularly with investigations, most of the people you hire don't intend to steal from you when you hire them. They're good people when they're hired, just like the rest of us. But if they're left alone long enough, and they perceive these opportunities, and then they're hit with some kind of stressor in their life, like their son has been jailed and they need an attorney, or that somebody has a medical condition in their family, they start out borrowing just to help it and put it back. They don't intend to steal. And sometimes when you find those kind of things, and you're sitting there with this person interviewing them, and you know what they've done, and it can be challenging knowing that, okay, when I issue my report, they're going to get fired tomorrow. They've lost their job. They've been here this many years. They've lost their retirement. They've lost their job. They've got kids to support. It can be tough sitting there with these people because you have some type of empathy for them. Sure, they made the decision to steal. I don't blame myself for writing a report and figuring it out, trying to protect the public interest, but it can still be very difficult when you're sitting with these people knowing what the consequences are. And many times they're very, they can't believe they've done this, and and then it sounds, and they're crying and all of these kind of things, and they may be subject to prosecution. For the most part, though, a lot of frauds, unless they're real large and they're public, they're not prosecuted, and that's simply because most district attorneys in a large organization would tell you, unless it's $250,000 or more, I'm not going to prosecute it. Or the NCIS and DCIS will tell you, unless it's $1 million, we probably don't have the time for it. And the U.S. attorneys will tell you the same thing. They're basically not going to prosecute these things. And quite frankly, a lot of organizations don't want to go out there to their public and their members, particularly churches that are stole from a lot. They do not want to go to their congregation and say, we have let somebody here steal from you for the last 2 or 3 or 10 years. And so those kind of things are reasons that are not reported, or that they're not prosecuted, but it's still very damaging to the person. And so I've felt myself, feeling sorry for these people sometime, even though they've done bad things, and having empathy for them. But in the end, I have to do my job. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Am I next?
Back to you. Yep.
What have several other people, such as auditees, staff, or bosses, told you are your strengths? And then what about your shortcomings or development needs?
Okay, well, I guess my strengths, I think, have always been managing people. I've always been able to get people motivated and get them behind one plan of action and getting them to be inspired themselves. I find you get a lot more work if they want to do all of this, unless other than your plan of demanding that they do it. So I think I've always been good at that. I've always been good at the big picture part of looking at something. Now, okay, just taking for granted what you say is true, what is that going to mean? And sometimes you can come to the realization, okay, so what? Okay, or okay, somebody is doing something they shouldn't do, and we want you to check it out. Okay, it sounds like they shouldn't do it, but show me where it's wrong. Okay, is this wrong or not? Let's see if it's wrong first. So it's all those kind of questions have to be answered, and a lot of times people go plodding ahead to check all this stuff out without looking at the big picture elements first. So I think I've been good at that, looking at the big picture. I'm, like anybody, I've missed details before. Everybody has to work on that. I'm human. I've missed some of the details, but I think I've always gotten the main themes right. I know at SPAWAR, when I was leaving there, I went back and read some of my reports I did when I first got there, and I found, because I knew so much more than some of my earlier reports, I found that some technical aspects of things I'd reporting on were, I believed, incorrect at this time. But the funny thing was, it was so specific and so technical, nobody else knew it. Even the department head, when we had given them the report, didn't know it was wrong. So I went and called them and told them, hey, I'm leaving now, but I was going to tell you that was wrong in there. So I'm not afraid to admit it when I'm wrong. But like anything, I've been the subject of giving people too much credit or whatever sometimes, and thinking that this person's working out good and giving them the benefit of the doubt when maybe I shouldn't have. I've probably done that a few times. So I'm human. I'm going to make mistakes in any job, and I'll freely admit it. Try to improve.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so back to me, and let's just ask you, why are you interested in the city auditor's position with the city of Gainesville?
Well, I'm interested because I've been the number 2 man in Nashville. I've worked for a good leader. He's been renewed on a new 8-year term. I feel I'm ready to have my own. I'm ready to do it myself. I probably, if I'd went into this field initially, I spent 21 years in the Marine Corps, so I didn't get started till later on. Same thing. I've got a 10 and 12-year-old. I started kind of late on that, so I feel I've always. My father lives was a commissioner down in Charlotte County. He's down there. I've got an uncle in town. I lived in Jacksonville. I was at Cecil Field part of the time, a F-18 unit. My dad was in the Air Force. We moved around so much. When people ask me where I'm from, I pretty much tell them Jacksonville instead of Chanute Air Force Base, because where's that at? And all that stuff. So I've pretty much grown up in the South, and so I think I've been to Gainesville many times before, and I used to go from Jacksonville down in my grandparents were in Miami all the years. When they retired, they moved to St. Pete. Well, I was in Jacksonville, so I'd go down to St. Pete quite a bit. Well, of course, I got ticketed down by Waldo once, and then that was right before the AAA put it on the list. So I knew of Gainesville. I'd been to Gainesville, but I didn't really know of Alachua County until I got that ticket, which I protested. Wound up costing me, I think, $35 more than it would have if I would have just sent it in. But such is life. I believe that. Looks like this is a good opportunity. My wife also, she's never necessarily been enamored with Nashville. She's not into country music that much, and so she's she says everybody comes down as a guitar and a dream, and so she's ready for a fresh start, and I think it's a good opportunity. Good community. No reason not to apply for it.
Wonderful. Are there any? Is there anything else that you'd like to add, or maybe to clarify an earlier question that may have been stirring around your head since you covered it?
No, I think I've been able to make my case pretty good. I feel satisfied with my answers.
Well, then that concludes all we have at this time, and I know you'll be escorted out, and then you'll come back to us one-on-one with some interviews today and tomorrow. So
Okay.
Thank you very much for being here.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Ms. McBride, I think our next appointment is not scheduled to 3:45, is that right?
3:45?
No,
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong place, sorry.
10:45.
It's late.
that's your
It's late.
appointment.
It's late. 11 o'clock.
Okay.
Hey, can we speed that up?
Okay. So how about we stand in recess until 10:50? We're in recess. Yeah.
They go like turkey. His wife thing is capping function. F-U-N-K.
All right, calling back to order the meeting of the Gainesville City Commission, special meeting for today, February 23rd.
Today's one, probably could have used the police service technician today. How you doing?
Explorer.
Yeah.
Save a few bucks.
Can
Well,
say
welcome.
still good morning.
Good morning. Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, let me first just thank you for being with us today and coming down to our city and to interview for this position. And we also want to congratulate you for being a finalist. And we have received materials about you, your resume and such, and it's been included in our backup for today. So we're somewhat familiar with you, but we'd like to go through a series of questions. We have about 12 questions to help us understand a little bit more. We'll have plenty of time, looks like. You have about an hour. And these questions hopefully will allow you to be as thorough as you need to be to help us better understand if you're the right fit for this position and if we're a good fit for you. All right, so with that said, I'll get the ball rolling with the first question. We've had an opportunity to review your resume, so if you would take a few minutes now to explain from your perspective how your background prepares you for this position.
First, I would like to thank you very much for inviting me. Second, as you can hear me, I have a heavy accent. My kids speak on my accent, so I'm not sensitive at all. Anytime if I said something is not clear, please ask me to clarify. Not sensitive at all. Sure. My name is Magdi, and I'm originally, as I mentioned, from Egypt. I started in public accounting early in my career, then moved to the hotel business in accounting as well as auditing. Then I moved from Egypt to Saudi Arabia to work for public accounting again, and after this I started an internal audit department for a healthcare organization, and the concept of internal audit was new at that area. After this, I was promoted to be the chief financial officer for that company. Then we immigrated, my family and I, to the United States of America, and started in a subsidiary company of Cleveland Clinic as a senior accountant. My passion to audit continued inside me, so I moved from Cleveland Clinic subsidiary company to Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and I spent 10 years in Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. After this, I was eager to regain my leadership, and was an opportunity for the city of Minneapolis. They were looking for someone to lead their internal audit function. They had the function, but for a year or more, they stopped it after the gentleman retired. So I accepted the job, and I recreated an internal audit department for the city of Minneapolis and built the quality within the process. Hired my team. We worked together as a team in developing the process that will qualify us to be the highest quality internal audit. After this, I worked for like 3 years and a half with the city of Minneapolis. Then I was invited to work for Jackson Health System in Miami, Florida, which is quasi-government. It's owned by Miami-Dade County, and I worked for almost a year, but my family changed their plan. The plan was originally to join me in June, but one of my kids changed his plan. They said, we're not moving. And my wife said, if that particular son will not be moving, probably it's not wise for us to move. And instead, I had to move back to Minnesota. I communicated this to the chair of the audit committee with the CEO, and they understood the family situation. Then when I went back to Minnesota, things changed, but not as I wanted. So my wife and I agreed that we will open the horizon, and if there's a good opportunity for me, like in Gainesville, she will move with me, and if the kids wanted to stay, that would be fine with them. My experience, I would say, might make me one of the best candidates, is diversified between business, through business, government, services, public accounting. I'm not claiming I'm the best on audit, but with my background and diversity in my experience, qualifications, studying business, having a master's degree, I'm a fraud investigator as well, not just CPA. So I have the good collection of qualifications and experience that may make me very comfort to lead the department. In addition, going through the website and knowing more about Gainesville leadership and internal audit, I feel the internal audit department you have is highly qualified, and it looks like they also did a good job in communicating and engaging with the city leaders and also the management. One of my philosophy is internal audit has to be a partner with everyone, with the city leaders, with every department. However, there's a fine line that we should not cross. We need to maintain our objectivity and independence. It doesn't eliminate us to be partners, because we're adults. We don't like to be told what to do, but better to be partners. We'll get the same or better results when we partners with our clients. But again, the fine line should not be crossed between being partners and maintain our independence and objectivity. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, are you concluded with that? I mean, you have some more to add? Yeah.
So, again, back to my confidence. I feel very confident to lead the internal audit, as I led a very successful audit function in the city of Minneapolis, which might have some similar activities as Gainesville, although the size of the city might be larger, but again, the activities probably would be the same.
Let's get a follow-up, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure I understand the one part that you described to us. The city of Minneapolis did not have an independent auditing department or organization, and you came in and built it. Is that what I hear from you?
Not independent, I mean internal audit. Before I joined, they had one auditor retired like 2 years before I joined.
Okay, so that auditor worked for the city manager or some other department, but it wasn't its own entity? They just had it, they employed an auditor?
They had an internal auditor, just one person. And that person retired before I joined, like by 2 years. Because of the limited resources, I can't say they had a well-established department. Was an auditor that he did the best he can. I didn't meet him. I feel I was more fortunate than him because I had the support from management. I had larger resources, but I had to create, I would say, the internal audit department.
Okay.
That's it. Answer the question?
All right, very good. Thank you. Commissioner Carter.
Yes, thank you so much for coming today, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, the question I have for you is, as you perceive it, what is the primary role of the city auditor, and how will you go about defining and fulfilling that role?
I think the primary role for the city auditor is kind of like someone who provides assurance to the leadership, to the citizen, to management, that things are working as intended. Because I don't expect, for example, if I am the CFO, I'm not reviewing every single thing. I can review higher level, but I don't have that time to go through the processes and see where we can improve or so. You are as leaders, you don't have that time to look for processes or so. We work as your eyes, as the citizen eyes, as the management eyes as well. We're working as partner to make sure that processes, controls, compliance are working as you think it's working. And again, we are human beings. We perfectly expect things are not working fine, but it's not, the objective is to make people look bad. Absolutely not. The objective is to have the process better, more effective, more efficient. So we will be working with our partners as managers or leaders, how we can improve in a way that will make the improvements take place. We will never be like, we're here to get you. No, we're partners, because here's the value. If we are the best internal audit on the earth and we make the best recommendations, unless these recommendations will be received and implemented, I don't think we will be successful as audit function. So simply we are a partner with these parties.
I'd like to ask you a question about credibility and trust. How would you go about establishing credibility and building trust with the elected officials, your fellow charter officers, or department directors and supervisors, general staff, and then also the public at large?
I always promise two things: transparency and no surprises, except for fraud investigations, which is a different story. But in general, we always promise transparency, no surprises. The more we communicate, not everything, I mean, unnecessary, I mean, to communicate the important things and what you need to know, the better you will cooperate with us as a manager. You trust us. It's not the end night, I think, by working with us, and we walk the talk, and when we say transparency, no surprises, and you see it, you feel it, I think that will be building the trust. If you feel that we are here to help you, also will be a big block to build the trust. Again, we're partners. We have to work together to get the value. Otherwise, we'll be making recommendations, and if you don't listen, and you have the right not to listen because we are consultants, much more than we have no authority over anyone on the city to mandate a change or so. We make recommendations, and it is the management responsibility and your governance responsibility to see if these recommendations are implemented.
Thank you. Good morning. At Gainesville, we value diversity and inclusiveness a great deal, and we make it a very proactive approach here, and the Commission takes it very seriously. And I want to know if you've had any challenges that you faced in your career in ensuring diversity in the jobs you've had or your office, and what have you specifically done to address those challenges?
I'm the one who's getting benefit from diversity. I value much, and probably one of the good reasons, or the key reasons that we immigrated to America is the diversity. Because we like the equality, we like people to be treated equally, we like the opportunities to be open to everyone based on the efforts and intelligence you have. I didn't have any problem for diversity. I worked with many diversified people. Even when I was working in Saudi Arabia, in the corporate office, we were like 50 employees in the corporate office. We were from 24 different nationalities. So I feel diversity is a positive, is a plus to learn more, and the more point of view will have the process or the resolution or solution will be better. Because maybe I'm focusing on this area, but because of diversity in background, education, ethnics, whatever, they might be able to provide some adding value, probably I would be missing. So diversity is a big value to me.
Okay, thank you.
Me?
Yep, you're up.
Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to Gainesville.
Thank you.
Please describe your auditing experience within the following specific areas. Performance, there should be a bulleted list there for you, so you don't have to write them down.
Okay, that's okay.
Performance, operational, financial, compliance, fraud and investigation, and utilities. And that list should be there for you to see the specific areas. Do you see the list?
I don't see the list. Do I have it here? Oh, here? Oh. Okay. I will leave the performance till the end, and I'll come back to it. But I'd like to talk about the operational audit. I have two approaches to review the operations. When I start for an area that they didn't have any audit before and didn't have any audit experience to be audited, I will meet with the leader and tell him or her, tell me what is really not working at all and it needs a lot of improvements, and tell me about what is working, what's not working. Let's focus on that area that is not working at all, because I'm not going to audit it, because if I audit it, what to audit if you're telling me it's not audit? But let's work together on not an audit, on a consulting basis, how we can make this area be better. So together, at a consulting level, we'll work together, make our recommendations, you implement it, and maybe after 6 months or a year, we'll come back to audit it formally. And for the operations, it could be for a change in the operation, current operation, implementation of a new IT system. And I have plenty of this. I can give you some examples. Recently, let me focus on city of Minneapolis. When I joined, they had new timekeeping system, was in the process, wasn't completed yet. So as internal audit, we participated with them at the consulting level to see were controls built into the process or they needed to have some enhancements. And we made our recommendations while they were developing the system. So when the system went live, they addressed these issues before. This is one example. I have many examples if the time allows. Financial audit, we used to help the external auditors, but not in the city of Minneapolis, in other jobs, to provide resources and work with them hand in hand in auditing the financial statements and also the A133. And I cannot separate financial from operational. Like, for example, if we're auditing accounts payable, for example, there are dollars, there are payments, which are part of the financial, but also there is a process and control. So it is, to me, a mix or a combination between financial and operational audit. Most of the reviews will have this one, like payroll, accounts payable, grant management, contracts, if we have contracts with the government. Again, it's a hybrid between process and financial as well. And I have so many examples, as I told you. Compliance. In every review, I would say, there is a piece of compliance. If we're doing human resources review, we'll look for the process, we'll look for the compliance as well. So many compliance area in human resources. Grant management. Every grant might have separate rules, different than the others, although mainly could be some general rules, but every grant might be different. So we look at the compliance with each grant.
Can I ask you about grant management? Do you also audit contract management?
Yes. And I'll come back to,
okay.
or maybe better now, contract management as well, because one of the last reviews I had in the city of Minneapolis, the construction contract management. We did not look for a construction contract from A to Z. We were looking for how the city is overseeing this contract management. Do you have a contract manager assigned to each contract? Mm-hmm. Does that person, he or she, understands the contract? Do they communicate to the contractor the requirements for payments, especially final payments, for example? Are we clear on what documents are needed for the final payments before we make the final payment? So again, the contract management is very big. I also, with the contract management, the city of Minneapolis outsourced IT in general, and we had a contract review for that IT. We had also Excel Energy is the one who is franchised for electricity, for power for the city of Minneapolis. We audited that contract. So thank you for asking. Fraud investigations. I'm a certified fraud examiner, and again, I feel very comfortable to investigate frauds. It depends on the type of fraud and the type of investigations. I may need some help from outside if we don't have the resources, especially if we need to go through data mining. I'm not an IT person, and I'm not sure if within the department we'll have an IT data mining expert. If not, probably we can use some outside resources. But I'm capable to do the fraud investigations and also capable to know which area that we cannot do it, and we have to have an outside consultant for that. And I had many fraud investigations, but was not in the city of Minneapolis. Utilities, as I mentioned, city of Minneapolis, they have their own water treatment plant. One of the reviews we performed, and all these reports are public, you can Google it. There was, I believe, the percentage of waste kind of was not within the norm. I'm not sure if the national standard is like 6% or so. I believe it was like 12 or 13%. And they asked us to work and identify what are the reasons. And we worked with outside consultant as well. And we identified the reasons basically after trying to approach every potential or every chance where this discrepancy could come. It came from the meters at the end, that the calibrations of the meters were not done on timely manner, I would say.
What, can I?
Go ahead.
How did they resolve that?
They had a plan. for every size of the meters, the 3/4, the 1 inch, and whatever, that within 2 or 3 years, all these meters will be calibrated.
Thank you.
Please continue.
Yeah.
Or is that, did you cover all the points? Okay.
This is for the utility. That was for the water.
Water treatment plant.
Yep, I think you got it all.
Yeah.
Commissioner Wells.
Back the performance.
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
He's got more. He's got to go back.
We're listening.
The performance. The performance, which simply if you have a program and you wanted to see the results where as you expected or not, how internal audit will help in not measuring, but kind of like testing the measures to see whether the results of the programs came as it should be or not. We did have the training. We had the staff qualified to do performance audit in the city of Minneapolis, but we were not requested to do performance audit as there was another department unit of 3 persons. All what they did is a performance audit, and we tried to partner with them to provide our input or so, but we did not do actual performance audit by ourselves. However, performance audit will not be different than anything if we know the objective, the risks, controls, how to make sure that we are measuring the right measure, and we use the right data to measure it. So I feel comfort even I did not do helping with the team, because we look at the competency collectively as a team of internal audit. Do we own the skills needed within the team? So if I don't have it, one of my team will have, I can use my management skills and my knowledge, make sure that we provide quality performance audit. That's why I want to keep it at the end.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank
Morning.
you very much for being here today. You've touched on it, particularly with the fraud area, that a city auditor can be viewed as a very threatening role when interacting with others in the organization. And I'd like to ask a little bit more, you've touched on it a little bit, but a little bit more on how you see building positive working relationships to be able to get your job done, with the high-level charter officers, with the other employees within the organization.
I will be honest with you. Being an internal auditor in a public entity like City of Gainesville or any other city is more challenging than being an internal auditor anywhere else. And my plan, for example, I would like to, if I get the job, I would like to meet individually with every one of you to understand what are the expectations from the internal audit. I will meet with every department head to make sure that they understand what is the role of internal audit. Working with my team to emphasize, as I mentioned before, we are a team. It's not the team with an audit. We have a larger team. Back to the transparency, no surprises, is a big concept in building the relationship. One thing also I can add to myself, because I worked at some time as a CFO, so I put myself in the other party's shoes. Empathy is very important to me. So before I write a sentence, I will read the sentence many times to make sure that the sentence is not harsh. The sentence cannot be misinterpreted by different people. With my team in the city of Minneapolis, we had the report writing standards that let's write it at the 6th grade level, because we know the leaders will understand it really well. The business people understand it, but we also write it for public. Public could be varied in their background and education. So we were very, very critical on the word selection in our report. In addition to this, when we send the draft report to our client, we ask them to review the report thoroughly to make sure that there is no a harsh word in the report or a word that could be misinterpreted the report. We're open to wording change every time, as long as the concept, the message is there. No one will influence for our independence to change what we wanted to communicate, but to make the language simpler easier, more positive, we're open much to that. I think to build the trust, it's so many pieces together will help building or continue having that trust in internal audit.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm going to give you an opportunity to elaborate a little bit more on some of your comments that you had with one of the earlier questions. Under what circumstances would you contract with an independent external auditing firm, and why?
As internal auditor, we have standards. The standards require me, if I lack competency, I cannot do the job. So I will reassess. If it is really important, we have to do it, and we don't have the competency, we have to come back to the leaders. This is an important issue. We don't have the skill sets. We need to hire a consultant. And we can work together on how we can fund this one if the fund is not there. But I will never accept an assignment that the internal audit as a team collectively do not or does not own the skills needed for that job. This is on a high level. So we'll do the work most of the time ourselves as long as we have the skill sets. The only time we'll go for outside, either we're lacking the expertise or there are some time pressure. We have the expertise, but it's needed to be completed before the due date that we can do it ourselves. I think these are the two circumstances that probably would like to get help from outside. And when I get help from outside, I always prefer co-sourcing, no outsourcing. Outsourcing means that person, he or she will take the job from A to Z. Co-sourcing, they will do a big part, but also as internal audit, we will be working with them at the same time under their supervision. Two things will get benefit. First, the cost will be less. Second one is transferring knowledge. We'll get training, we'll have hands-on on some of the processes maybe you were lacking experience before or so. Does that answer the question?
The phrase that he used, forgive me, the phrase you used, so what were the two types of outsourcing was one, and then what was the other one?
Co-sourcing and outsourcing.
Okay, yeah, like CO dash, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. First of all, just to let you know if you're not aware, but all the emails that you might give out, might send to us or anybody else as public record, and they could have it immediately. That being in mind, describe from your point of view, what do you believe the ideal communication relationship between you and your supervisors? And in addition, how do you deliver both good and bad news?
Thank you for bringing this. As I mentioned earlier, that it's very challenging to be an auditor in public sector like the city or so. I tell my team always, anything you write, expect that will be in public sometime. If you don't feel comfortable to write it, don't write it. Which I don't mean that you don't feel comfortable that it's a fact that we will write it. But always our writing will be clear, even our work papers, because our reports are public, but our work papers are protected till the report goes out. So at some time when the report is published, someone can ask for the work paper. So in everything we do, we have very high standards in our writing. Make sure that we are positive, we are clear, we are concise, and no unnecessary information is maintained. For communication with the people I report to, I'm open to any type of communications, and it depends on the topic and the issue. Like, for example, if I'm suspecting fraud in some area, I don't like to write it in a letter to say I'm suspecting, because someone can misunderstand it, and he or she can think there is a fraud. Excuse me. So back to, I think I will use the auditor common sense, a conservative auditor common sense in communications. We're not trying to hide anything from the public. We're very transparent. but we try to avoid some kind of misunderstanding. So it depends on the issue, it depends on the sensitivity, it depends on the topic itself. If it is something normal, I can definitely make it clear, concise, in email or phone call, depends on everyone's preferences. As I mentioned, if I get a job, I'll meet with every one of you to know more about your preferences. You prefer phone calls, you prefer emails, you prefer hard copies. But again, we're transparent, we're not trying to hide anything from the public, but we wanted to make sure that there will not be a misunderstanding.
Thank you.
Commissioner Warren, back to you.
Yep, back to, sorry, I was still writing notes. What was the most difficult professional situation you have found yourself in, and explain the circumstances and your efforts to manage them?
There are many, but I'll focus on one of them. As auditors, I cannot disagree on facts. We have to agree on facts, absolutely, because if I'm auditing an area and I provided some information and there is a doubt about the accuracy, I have to go back and correct it. So it's zero tolerance for disagreement on facts. However, we can disagree on the level of risks or the recommendations, that's fine. Even it's not really common in internal audit to disagree with clients. However, in one of the situations in the city of Minneapolis, and it is public report, it's not secret, I disagreed with the CFO, and the CFO should be my best partner. We should work together as true partners, but again, the fine line between independence and objectivity. There were some risks from internal audit perspective that they need to be addressed, and he said, I'm not going to address them. Try to communicate with him again and again. Try to exercise the maximum negotiation skills I had. It didn't work. And then my last avenue was to tell him, if you need more time to address the issues, which didn't need much time, probably a month or two, although this might upset my audit committee, but I will take the responsibility to hold the report till you complete them. So when the report goes public, the action plans are complete. And this is a magic word, nobody will care at that time what happened, since it is addressed and resolved. But unfortunately, with all my negotiation skills, it didn't work, and the report had to go out with disagreement, which I'm still not happy with that till today. But sometimes we had to stand behind our profession. Still, again, we have to be professional, very clear, very concise, very positive report, but the disagreement, we are required also to put it in the report. That was the most aggressive, and I'm not even happy with the results, but I had to choose this way.
Thank you. Commissioner Pope?
I come from an education background, so I take copious notes.
He's got a book.
I do.
It'll be published in 2 weeks.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to ask you a similar but uniquely different type of question. We would like for you to describe for us a point in your career where you face an ethical dilemma, and just describe the situation for us and what made it difficult, and then describe for us the path you took to resolve that ethical dilemma.
I can go back to the same example. When the disagreement happened with the CFO, I had options to convince myself fakely that it's not a big issue, that will ruin my relationship with him and probably another people in the city. And I can say, you know what, you communicated to him verbally, you can take it out from the report. Let's impact on me, and the reputation of internal audit might be perceived as harsh or so. And I'll be very honest, I reviewed myself and I felt, no, these recommendations are very important to the city and they had to stay. But I said, Magdi, maybe for some reason, whatever, might be you're biased against that person, which I'm not biased against anyone. Let me get some input from some people I respect and I trust. And I did with the the audit committee members who are auditors. And they were there were two auditors in the audit committee, and they both supported me very much. So I felt I have to stand behind what I said, because ethically, I'm not going to do anything that might put my integrity at risk, even internally to myself, and also the expectations. People expect me to be objective, to be ethical. I'm not going to make anyone down on this. Many other examples, but I think that was a true life or very visible example. The report is public, as I mentioned. So,
thank you very much.
So I have a question. What have several other people, such as auditees, staff, or bosses, or even your audit committee, told you are your strengths? And then the converse, what about your shortcomings or development needs?
I'm perfect. I have no shortcomings. I think what I heard most frequently about my strength is the integrity and building relationships with the people I work with, my team, my clients, the people I report to, the city council or audit committee. I take my job very serious, but in the same time, the empathy, as I mentioned before, makes me put myself in the other shoes. And would I like to be told this way? Would I like to be written this way? That helps me very much on building the relationship. So integrity, building relationship, and also my competency. I heard it a lot. And I'll stop saying good things about myself. Maybe I can. I think what I need to improve, as I mentioned, maybe I'm working hard, but it takes very slow progress and improvements. My accent, because sometimes people can misunderstand my accent, and some of them could feel shy to ask me to repeat or so. That's why I'm focusing much in every time I tell them I'm not sensitive to my accent, but it might sometimes create some misunderstanding. The other one is writing. Writing is English is my second language. I write good, but it takes me a longer time to write. However, if my team wrote the report and I edited, I'm a good editor. It looks odd, but I'm a good editor, but not very good writer. I think these two areas are the ones. You will not feel the writing because we have the internal process. So you will see the report, you'll see a perfect report almost, because one of the things that we have zero tolerance in having any typo or so in the report, because no one sees the hours, late nights behind the work. People see only the pages of the report. So even with my weaknesses, I will rely much on my team to cover this. So collectively, again, as a team, we cover whatever could be missed in one of our teams.
Okay, very good. All right, I'll ask the last couple of questions here for you. So why are you interested in the city auditor's position for the city of Gainesville?
I worked for Florida for some time. Didn't work for my family to move. And I found it is a good opportunity that I come back to Florida. This is on macro. On micro, when I searched the city of Gainesville, I found that it's really a unique city. The population is not that big. It reminds me with the city of Rochester in Minnesota, which I lived like 10 years. The population there is like 110,000, which is close to the 125 we have here. I felt as a family, small cities would be more attracting to us than big city. I came from Cairo, which is like 20 million population, so I have my fair portion on living in big cities. I'm looking for small cities where people are much more friendly, much more calm, no traffic, so we can enjoy life more. Also, I'm impressed with the city of Gainesville with a small size, with what they do. Like, for example, as I mentioned, in Minneapolis, the city doesn't operate electricity, but here you operate your own electricity. You operate your own transportation. So I felt the city is well managed, and going also through the background of each of you, I felt it's high-quality leaders in the city. I went also through the background of the audit team. So very impressive quality of people and education. So I felt I'll be working in government, but with high caliber people with business mentality, and that was very attracting to me. The city is good, small city. People I'll be working with are very impressive. These two factors, I cannot find anything else I wish in my next job.
All right, so is there anything else that you would like to add for us, or is there any clarification you want to revisit from an earlier answer?
I think I'm fine with that now, because I know that I'm scheduled to meet with each of you, so I might have some questions from my side for each of you.
Okay. Well, then, thank you very much for... I'm sorry, Commissioner Carter?
I just want to say, as a person that's not afraid, I'm not afraid to say, excuse me, or what did you say? I thought you communicated very well, sir.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much.
So I want to thank you for, again, being here and for your answers. I think we're very pleased, very thorough and deliberate, and we appreciate that very much. We know there's a luncheon, so we'll have another time sort of mingle, and then the one-on-one interview, so we're looking forward to that.
It's not a lunch.
Not a lunch, just the one-on-one interviews. I'm figuring this out.
Oh, there's no lunch today.
Okay, so with that said, again, we thank you, and we will and we will adjourn the meeting. And there is no member of the public. I would say if there's any members of the public who wish to speak, they can, but since there are none, we'll just go ahead and proceed to adjournment.
Thank you.
Thank you.